Welcome to English with Zenko Master. Get ready to learn something new today.
I was walking without a plan that morning. My head was full of noise, but the streets were quiet. I had lost my job the day before, and I didn't want to talk to anyone. The city felt too big, and I felt too small. I turned down a street I had never walked before and kept going. The buildings on this street were old and narrow. Some windows were broken, and the paint was peeling. I noticed a shop with no name on the sign. It looked forgotten. The windows were dirty, and I could not see inside. But the door was open, and something told me to go in. Inside, the air smelled like dust and old books. The light was low, and the shop was full of strange things. I saw wooden boxes, glass bottles, and broken clocks. Nothing looked new. Everything looked like it had a story. I didn't know why I stayed, but I walked slowly, touching nothing. In the far corner, I saw a small black box. It was plain, with silver edges. It looked simple, but it felt special. I picked it up, and it felt heavier than I expected. There was no price tag. I opened it. Inside was one small folded paper. I opened the paper. The words were written in neat black ink. Make one wish. The rest is yours. That was all it said. I looked around for someone to ask about it, but the shop was empty. I called out once, but no one came. The silence made me nervous. I didn't want to steal it. I took some money from my wallet and left it on the counter. Then I left the shop with the box in my bag. Outside, the wind felt colder. I looked back once, but the shop door was closed. I didn't remember hearing it shut. At home, I placed the box on my table. I stared at it for a long time. I wasn't someone who believed in magic or strange things, but something about that note stayed in my mind. Make one wish. What could it mean? I laughed to myself and felt silly. Still, I couldn't ignore it. After lunch, I sat alone in my kitchen and held the box again. I thought about my life. I was tired of feeling lost. I wanted to feel alive again. I wanted something to change. I held the box in both hands and whispered my wish. I want to be happy again, I said quietly. Nothing happened. No light, no sound, no change in the air. I felt foolish and put the box back on the table. That night I went to bed early, but I couldn't sleep. I had strange dreams. In one dream, I was walking down a long glass road. People watched me from the sides, but their faces were blurry. In the dream, someone whispered to me, "You asked. Now you must pay." I woke up sweating. My room was dark and cold, even though the heater was on. The box was still on the table. I walked over to it. It was still closed, but it felt different now. The next day, I got a phone call. It was from a company I had applied to months ago. They wanted to meet me for an interview. I was surprised. I had almost forgotten I sent them my resume. The woman on the phone sounded excited. She said they liked my background. I went to the interview that afternoon. I wore my best clothes, but my shoes were still worn from all the walking. The office was warm and modern. The people were kind. I answered all their questions easily. When I left, I felt light, as if something inside me had shifted. That evening, I received another call. They offered me the job. I should have been happy. I smiled. I felt grateful. But deep down, I also felt something else: fear. I thought of the note again. Make one wish. Was this my wish coming true? And what did "the rest is yours" mean? Over the next week, good things kept happening. A neighbor brought me soup without asking. A stranger paid for my coffee in line. My old friend Sarah sent me a message, even though we hadn't spoken in years. I got compliments from people at the grocery store. I started to smile more. I felt energy returning to my body. My mornings were easier. The walk to work felt shorter. I looked in the mirror and saw someone brighter. But at night, the dreams returned. I saw the same road. I heard the same voice. You asked, you must pay. One morning, I found the box open on the table. I was sure I had closed it. Inside, the note was gone. In its place was a black stone. It was small, cold, and smooth. I touched it, then pulled my hand back quickly. It gave me a sharp feeling in my palm. I placed the stone back in the box and closed it. The next day, something strange happened. I saw a boy near the park. He wore a gray coat and stood very still. He looked right at me. His eyes were dark. He didn't speak, but his mouth moved like he was saying something. I couldn't hear him, but I felt the word in my chest. He said, "Soon." I stepped back, but when I looked again, he was gone. I went home early that day. I locked the doors and closed the curtains. I sat with the box on my lap and stared at it. That night, I didn't dream of roads. I dreamed of water. I was in a boat and the sea was wide. I saw people swimming in the water, calling for help. I didn't move. My hands stayed on the boat's sides. I watched, but I didn't help. I woke up crying. My pillow was wet. I sat up and looked at the box again. I didn't understand what was happening. I had asked for happiness, and I had received it. But something was wrong. I began to wonder, was this happiness mine, or did it come from somewhere else? The days continued, and the world kept giving me small gifts. A raise at work, a lost ring found, a forgotten debt paid back. But every time I received something, I saw another face. On the train, in a cafe, in the mirror. They all looked at me with tired eyes, and each time I heard the word again. Soon. I began to avoid people. I stopped answering messages. I worked from home when I could. I felt like something was building, like a storm that had not yet come. But I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know the rules of the wish I had made. One evening, I heard a knock at the door. It was soft and slow. I didn't move. The knock came again. I looked through the peephole. No one was there. But on the doorstep was a second stone, black and smooth like the first. I didn't touch it. I left it there. Later, I saw a third one on my windowsill, then another near my bed. The stones were following me. I felt their weight even when they were not in my hands. I didn't sleep well anymore. My face began to change. I looked older in the mirror. My eyes lost their shine. I wanted to undo the wish, but I didn't know how. The box stayed closed now. I tried to burn it, but the fire went out. I threw it into the river, but the next morning it was on my table again. Always waiting, always watching. That's when I understood. The wish had come with a test. I had asked for happiness, but the box had not created it. It had borrowed it, taken it from others. I was living on stolen light, and every day someone else was living in deeper shadow. I had passed no test. I had only taken the easy road, and the price was still being counted. Before I share the rest of my story, I need to know, where are you listening from? Knowing someone hears me, understands me, gives me strength. I stopped smiling as much after that. At work, I became quieter. People still treated me well, but I no longer trusted it. Every compliment felt heavy. Every kind act felt like it had been taken from someone else. I began to see the cost of my wish in their eyes. I noticed small changes. My coworker Linda became pale and tired. She once told me she had trouble sleeping. She said her dreams felt full of weight and water. She looked at me like she wanted to ask something but didn't know how. Her voice was softer than before. Another day, I passed a man in the elevator. He held a newspaper and stared at the wall. As I stepped in, he looked at me. I had never seen him before. He whispered one word under his breath. "Thief." He didn't look angry. He looked sad. The elevator door closed and he was gone. That night, I sat with the box again. I had not opened it in days, but I felt it pulling at me. I took a deep breath and lifted the lid. This time, there was no paper and no stone, only a feather. It was black, and the tip was dipped in red. I held it in my hand. It was light, almost nothing. But my arm began to shake. I placed it back inside and closed the box. I didn't want to know what it meant, but deep down, I already did. The next week, Sarah stopped answering my messages. She had been the friend who reached out after years of silence. We met once, and it had felt beautiful. She told me I had helped her, but now she was gone again. I called her, but she didn't answer. I sent a letter just in case. A few days later, I received a reply. The envelope was torn. The paper inside was stained. The words were simple. "You took something I needed. Please don't write again." There was no name, but I knew it was from her. I couldn't explain this to anyone. I couldn't tell a doctor. I couldn't speak to a priest. The wish had changed something in the world around me. It had turned joy into a trade. I was walking through life with borrowed light, and now the sky was darkening for others. One afternoon, I walked to the same street where I had found the shop. I wanted to return the box. I wanted to beg someone to take it back. But when I reached the place, the shop was gone. The building was still there, but the windows were boarded up. The door was locked. There was no sign, no name. Nothing to prove it had ever been real. I stood there for a long time. People passed me on the sidewalk, but I felt alone. A dog barked nearby. A child cried. Life went on around me, but I was frozen. I wanted to shout, but my voice stayed inside me. I walked home slowly. The box felt heavier in my bag, though I hadn't touched it. That night, I placed it outside my door. I didn't care if someone took it. I wanted it gone. But the next morning, it was inside again, waiting on my table. I lived in that quiet fear for many days. I still went to work. I still smiled when needed. But my heart was not at peace. I felt like a guest in my own body. I dreamed of the glass road again. This time, it was breaking under my feet. I ran, but the pieces fell behind me. One morning, something changed. I was walking through the park when I saw the boy again. The same boy in the gray coat. He stood under a tree, and this time he did not disappear. He looked at me, and I walked toward him without fear. As I reached him, he lifted his hand and pointed to the bench. I sat. He sat beside me. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. I understood. He was part of the price. One of many. His silence was my answer. I felt tears on my cheeks, though I didn't remember starting to cry. He took something from his pocket. It was a mirror the size of my hand. He gave it to me. I looked inside and saw my own face, but it wasn't the same. My eyes were hollow. My skin was dull. I looked tired in a way no sleep could fix. I handed the mirror back to him, but he shook his head. I had to keep it. He stood and walked away. I watched until he was gone. Then I walked home with the mirror in my hand. I didn't understand what I had to do, but I knew I couldn't keep living this way. At home, I placed the mirror on the table beside the box. They looked like they belonged together, one showing the price, the other demanding it. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat in a chair, watching the two objects. The room felt full of voices I couldn't hear. At dawn, I made tea and sat in silence. The next day, I called the company and gave notice. I told them I needed to leave the job. They were surprised. They asked if something was wrong. I said I needed to find something that couldn't be found in an office. They didn't understand. How could they? I packed a small bag and took the mirror with me. I left the box on the table. I locked the door behind me, knowing it wouldn't matter. If the box wanted to follow, it would. I traveled to a small town by the sea. I found a quiet place to stay and started working in a library. I didn't earn much, but I slept better. I didn't see the boy again, but sometimes I saw people looking at me with quiet recognition. They knew. They had made wishes too. One evening, a woman came to the library. She looked lost. I asked if she needed help. She smiled, but her eyes were full of fear. She whispered, "I found a box." I didn't ask where. I didn't ask what she wished for. I simply nodded and guided her to a chair. We sat together in silence for a while. Then she said, "I don't know what to do." I placed the mirror on the table between us. She looked inside and cried. I didn't touch her. I didn't speak. I let her see herself. After a while, she wiped her tears and said, "Thank you." She left, and I didn't see her again, but I knew she would find her way. Now, this is what I do. I stay in small places. I listen. I carry the mirror and wait. People come. Some stay. Some leave. But the lesson is always the same. Wishes are not free. Happiness has weight. And if you take light from the world, you must give it back. I stayed in that seaside town for a year. The days were quiet, and the air always smelled like salt. I worked at the library every afternoon. I helped children find books. I shelved returned copies. I spoke little, but I listened a lot. And people came. Not many at first. Just one or two each week. Most looked tired. Some looked afraid. A few brought nothing with them, but I knew why they came. There was a look in their eyes I had seen before, the same look I saw in my mirror when the box first changed me. I kept the black mirror in a small cloth bag. I did not show it to everyone, only to those who were ready. I never told them what to do. I only showed them what they needed to see. After that, most of them cried. Some stayed. Some moved on. The box never returned to me. I had left it behind, and for some reason, it stayed. But I knew it was still working in the world. I could feel it through the stories I heard. Each person who came had a version of the same beginning. I didn't mean to take so much. There was a pattern. The wish always sounded good. Some people asked for love. Some wanted health. Others asked for money or peace. And in the beginning, they all received what they asked for. But after some time, they began to feel the cost. That's when they searched for someone like me. I didn't think of myself as special. I was not a guide or a teacher. I was only a person who had made a mistake and lived long enough to understand it. But people listened to me, and they left lighter. That was enough. One autumn, I met a woman named Elise. She was in her 50s and wore a long green coat. She came into the library near closing time. Her hand shook when she handed me a book. I asked if she needed help, and she said no. But she didn't walk away. She stood near the window for a while. Then she turned and said, "Do you believe in curses?" I didn't answer. I simply pulled a chair out at the nearest table and waited. She sat down and took a deep breath. She had made her wish 3 months earlier. She had asked to be forgiven, not by one person, but by everyone she had ever hurt. She told me she had lived a hard life. She made choices she regretted. She wanted peace at last, and she thought the wish would give it to her. At first it did. People she hadn't seen in years called her. One man wrote a letter. Another came to her door. She cried with them, and her heart felt full. But slowly, something changed. She began to hear voices at night. Not angry ones, but sad ones. She saw the faces of people she didn't recognize. She saw shadows in the corners of her home. She started to feel the pain she had caused, not in memory, but in her own body. Her legs ached. Her chest was tight. She couldn't sleep. The peace she wanted turned into pain. I showed her the mirror. She stared at it for a long time. She didn't cry. Instead, she smiled. "That's what I thought," she said. Then she stood and left. I never saw her again. But the next week, someone new came. A teenage boy. He was carrying her green coat. He didn't say much. Just, "She told me I'd understand if I came." I nodded. I didn't ask more. I showed him the mirror. He didn't look away. He held it for a long time, then gave it back. I watched him walk into the cold air outside. He walked like someone who had decided to change. I wondered sometimes if I should go back to the place where it started. I didn't even know if that city still held the shop, or if the shop had ever truly existed. But something told me the test wasn't over. I had helped others, but I had not yet paid in full. That winter, I decided to travel again. I said goodbye to the library and left the mirror with the boy. He had come back several times by then. He helped other people like I once did. He was ready, and I was ready to let go. I returned to the city after the first snow. The streets looked different. Taller buildings, brighter lights. But I found the old street. I found the building. The windows were still boarded up. The door still locked. But this time there was a single stone on the step. It was black and smooth. I picked it up and placed it in my pocket. I found a room to rent nearby. I took no job. I stayed in that city to wait. I didn't know for what, but I felt the test was near its end. I wrote in notebooks. I walked alone. I gave food to anyone who asked. I listened to the people who talked to the air. I did not expect the boy to return, but he did. He was older now, stronger. His eyes were still dark, but not empty. He came to me in the early evening. I was sitting on a bench outside the station. He stood in front of me and reached into his coat. He took out the mirror I had given away. He placed it in my hands. I looked inside and saw the girl I had once been. Lost, quiet, afraid. Then I saw the woman I had become. Wiser, maybe, but still searching. Then the image changed again. I saw other faces, dozens, hundreds. Each face had a small piece of my story. I closed the mirror. He reached out again and gave me something new, a folded paper. I opened it slowly. The words were written in neat black ink, the same as before. You gave back more than you took. The rest is no longer yours. I held the paper for a long time. The wind picked up. I looked around, but the boy was gone. The air felt still, like the moment after a storm. I looked at the paper again and smiled. I walked back to the room I was renting. For the first time in many years, I felt light. Not empty, but clean. I lay down and slept without dreams. The next morning, the mirror was gone. In its place on my table was a feather, white and soft. And this time, I knew exactly what it meant. I hope you have enjoyed the story. Like and comment if you want to hear more soon.